That's why some high performers don't feel lonely because they lack people. They feel lonely because their nervous system never learned how to receive. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, the space where me and you get to have a couch conversation to help you get to the highest level of your potential and performance. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about a very important emotion and topic that most high performers and leaders go through. One of the most common emotions high performers go through is loneliness. I know that because for the past 5 years, I've worked with top-level CEOs, leaders, professional athletes, and major artists from all over the world. And this comes up in every single session. Not failure, not lack of ambition, loneliness. It usually sounds like this. Where are those people with whom I can have deep conversations and feel truly connected to? I've been there too. I know what it feels like. You can be surrounded by people. You can be admired. You can be respected and still feel emotionally alone. And because of that exact pattern, I built an entire company literally around this. Home of Greatness is a human performance platform and community for high performers who refuse to play small. And at the core of it is something that is very intentional, real community. Leaders, athletes, artists from over 15 different countries who genuinely support one another, not strategically and not transactionally, humanly. Because performance without connection eventually becomes empty. Let's clear something up first. Loneliness in leadership isn't just one thing. Yes, responsibility genuinely changes how your brain and your nervous system operate, and it has a big impact on whether you feel lonely or not. Because when you're responsible for people's outcomes, money, decisions, performance, consequences, your system actually shifts. Your brain moves into vigilance, containment, self-regulation, and emotional filtering. You stop processing life with people and you start processing life for people. And when you're in chronic decision mode or decision fatigue, your mental load goes up. And when your mental load stays high for long periods of time, emotional withdrawal becomes almost automatic. That part is real, is not weakness. And that's the cause of responsibility. But that's not the only reason why loneliness exists because, and this is very important, this truth doesn't cancel out another truth. Because sometimes loneliness is not just about responsibility. It's about unavailability sometimes. Sometimes it's a nervous system that learned early on that going, doing, handling, staying in control was safer than depending on anyone. And this is a common one. So leadership doesn't create these patterns, it meets them. Responsibility puts pressure on the nervous system, and pressure reveals how you already learned to cope. We go back to childhood. Yes, you have to go there sometimes. And if your nervous system learns safety through connection, leadership will feel heavy but shared. If your nervous system learns safety through independence, leadership becomes isolating. I'm going to do it on my own. We'll get to that later in the episode. That's why some high performers don't feel lonely because they lack people. They feel lonely because their nervous system never learned how to receive. And the tricky part here is that leadership actually rewards this. Being composed, self-contained, hyper-capable, all of that gets reinforced. Good job, you're doing great, sweetie.
Go, Kylie, go. Good job, Kylie. You're doing amazing, sweetie. Wow, look at her go.
So what once kept you safe slowly becomes your identity and eventually your loneliness. Studies show that high performers often score very high on self-reliance and lower on help-seeking. So if leadership feels lonely, the question isn't just how much am I carrying, but it's also how did I learn to carry these things when no one helped me? And there's no shame in that. But there is responsibility. The responsibility to build spaces where strength doesn't have to be on all the time. Those spaces that I'm talking about are within you. Here's what science tells us about connection, because you know, the science girl has to come out. There's a long-running study called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, and it followed people for decades. One of the clearest findings was long-term happiness and resilience are most strongly linked to close relationships and not achievement or status. Your brain can win at performance and lose at connection unless you intentionally train both of them. There are 3 types of loneliness, though, that nobody really talks about or names, because loneliness doesn't show up in the same way for everyone. Number 1 is emotional loneliness. That's when you feel like you can't fully say how you feel, when you're afraid of burdening others, when you're the strong one, so you edit yourself. Number 2 is relational loneliness. That's when you outgrow old friendships. I think I'm gonna have a whole episode about that alone. It's when the people around you don't carry similar pressure, and when you're misunderstood, even when you're loved. Third one is identity loneliness, the quiet question of, who am I when I'm not leading? When your role slowly becomes your personality. Boy, have I seen this. I've seen leaders who are always strong suddenly realize that no one actually knows them deeply. They're respected, but they're not really known. Take a moment to check in with yourself and see which one of those lands the most, because your awareness of that, as I always say, is the perfect place to start the inner work from. But now let's talk about an extremely common feeling or saying for most high performers, the myth of, wait for it, I don't need anyone. I can do it on my own. Oh my God, I have been through that. It's a belief that sounds strong, but it quietly hurts. Independence is a strength, but emotional isolation is not. Hyper-independence didn't start as arrogance. It started as adaptation, because at some point the nervous system learned that depending on people is not safe. I'll do it myself. I can't rely on others emotionally and better off handling things alone. So for many high performers, this came from early responsibility when they were younger, emotional unpredictability around caregivers, environments where weakness was not allowed, or them needing to grow up fast for some reason. So independence became protection, control, safety, competence, and eventually later isolation and loneliness, because they unintentionally push people away. What once kept you safe can later keep you isolated. Your nervous system does not care how successful you are. It still needs safe people around. And another thing, subsequent to that leaders do is they push people away without realizing it. It is usually not intentional. You can see over-independence, emotional minimalism, hyper-competence masking vulnerability, keeping relationships functional instead of intimate. From a nervous system perspective, this makes sense. Because when the brain feels overwhelmed, it chooses control over vulnerability to try to keep you safe. It says, I don't have time to feel, I have KPIs, or I don't have time to feel, I have to play a game, if it's athletes. And then there's another layer to that, because power itself creates emotional distance, even when relationships are good. When you hold power as a leader, founder, athlete, or authority figure, relationships can change because people unintentionally would filter what they say, they protect your image, they don't fully relax, they project expectations, and some feel intimidated by your energy, your presence, or your success. And on your side, you're careful with your words. You don't want to burden others, you want to manage perception, you don't want others to feel less than. So the connection here becomes polite, functional, respectful, but not always emotionally mutual. That's why some leaders can say, everybody's nice to me, but I don't feel like I'm deeply met. It's not because the relationships are fake. It's because the power subtly interrupts the emotional equality that you stand on. And that's also why many leaders feel most connected outside of their industry, with people who don't need anything from them, or in spaces where they're not in charge. And speaking of that, this is the key here. Real, true connection is what every leader needs for their growth, expansion, and survival, as any other human does. And here's why: a close circle of people changes everything. Not many people, real ones. Not impressive people, honest ones. Not those who are strategic for business, safe ones. A close circle is made of people who don't need your performance. People you don't lead. People who can say, you're not okay, and that's fine. Or you're wrong, you need to check that. Leadership requires isolation, while longevity, aging, being happy requires connection. Ask yourself that question. Who do I not need to explain myself to? Who can see me fail without losing respect? Who knows me beyond my title? Who do I feel more like myself after talking to them? This is why community matters so much. And this is why Home of Greatness exists, the place for leaders, athletes, and artists, because high performers don't need more motivation. They got that. They need safe environments where excellence and humanity can not only coexist, but create a space for you to thrive. So here's how to build connection without losing authority. This is where people get nervous because vulnerability does not mean that you're oversharing or that you need to overshare. And connection is not emotional dumping. It's selective openness. But in friendships, outside of your industry or within, depending on the person, at least one relationship where you're not the strong one, where you choose depth over access, where you're not venting down the hierarchy. That's why actually you need to schedule the connections like you schedule your meetings. Make time for your friends. Stop prioritizing work connections over the real ones. And a hard pill to swallow here is that some people can be loyal to you, but not safe for you. Trust what your body's trying to communicate with you when you're around others. When you feel heaviness or a block anywhere in your body, don't brush it off. Listen more closely. This is the highest form of intelligence and information when your intuition is trying to tell you something. Sometimes it is hard to act on your intuition, but it is always, always right and worth it. But I need to say that that of course friendship is a two-way street. It is not transactional. So I'm not saying here choose the people who give you something or whom you can benefit from, because we all know that some of the deepest value in friendship comes from you giving, supporting, loving, and sharing experiences. But safety still matters. Not everybody deserves your energy, love, effort, and time. But we'll talk more about that in an episode specifically about friendship. Subscribe to know more when it comes out. For now, I want to leave you with this. Loneliness in leadership is often a result of responsibility, emotional regulation, power dynamics, survival-based independence, a coping mechanism that your nervous system used to help you survive. But it is not lack of heart, not emotional deficiency, and not poor social skills, just a nervous system that learned, I carry, I contain, I handle. And the work isn't to be less strong. It is to create places where strength can rest and take a breath. If leadership feels heavy lately, maybe it's not a strategy that you need. Maybe it's connection. If you're looking for a space to connect with like-minded people who are just as ambitious and have depth and meaning and know how to have fun while doing that, check out our Home of Greatness community. All the details are in the description below. I would love to welcome you in our home. Let me know if you liked this, what you liked the most about this episode in the comments down below. Click the subscribe button for more episodes like this one, and don't forget to share it with the people that you care about. And I will see you next time in another couch conversation.